My name is Mark, and for almost 3 years I believed that love was as strong and constant as the morning sun. My girlfriend, let's call her Megan, and I met at a little neighborhood cafe on a chilly autumn evening. She was sitting by the window with a latte in her hands, gazing at the world as if she was memorizing every detail: the passing cars, the falling leaves, the flickering street lamp across the road. Her eyes met mine the moment I walked in, and something in that instant felt like fate. In those early weeks, everything seemed to move in soft focus, as if I were living inside a daydream. We spent entire afternoons lost in conversation about books, about music, about the strange habits we had growing up. Our laughter echoed down quiet streets during late-night walks. We'd share a single pair of earbuds, letting a favorite song become the soundtrack to our budding love story. Time has a way of weaving two souls together, especially when both hearts are open and unguarded. By the time we reached our first anniversary, we had dozens of inside jokes, pictures pinned up on our fridge, and a cat named Milo who liked to nap in the sunlit corners of our little apartment. We weren't perfect, and we never pretended to be. We bickered over who did the dishes more often or which show to watch before bed. But in my mind, those small conflicts were just colorful threads in the tapestry of something beautiful. A year after that, Megan and I decided to move into a slightly bigger place. It was a small house on a quiet street, nothing fancy, just one bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, and a patch of grass out back that we optimistically called a yard. We dream about adding a little patio with a grill or maybe even a small garden. For me, this was a promise of a future together. Our neighbors were mostly older couples, some with grandchildren who visited on weekends. At first, I imagined Megan and me following in their footsteps, growing old under the same roof, building a life with each other's laughter echoing in the hallways. But life has a way of surprising us in the cruelest moments. Even the brightest days can hide shadows waiting to break through at dusk. It all started on an ordinary Friday evening. Megan told me she planned to meet up with her girlfriends for a quick night out. Just dinner and a few drinks, she said. I didn't think much of it. She'd done this plenty of times before. She had her circle of friends, people she confided in about things she felt I might not fully understand. I never questioned it because I thought trust was a cornerstone of our relationship. Besides, wasn't that what healthy couples did? Give each other space to breathe, to socialize, to be individuals even within a shared life? When she left that evening, she looked radiant in a simple black dress and a light jacket. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. I remember her perfume lingered in the doorway after she stepped out. I smiled, thinking about how lucky I was to have someone as vibrant, someone who illuminated the room just by walking in. I spent the night reading an old paperback I'd found in the attic. Milo the cat curled up on my lap, purring softly. Occasionally, I'd check the time: 10 o'clock, 11, almost midnight. Megan texted around 12 saying, "Be home soon." That little exclamation mark at the end brought me comfort, and I pictured her laughing with friends, probably losing track of time. The minutes slipped into hours, and soon I realized something was off. By 3 in the morning, she still wasn't home. I reached for my phone, checking for any missed calls or messages. There were none. My heart began to pound. I dialed her number once, twice, 3 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. Horrible scenarios raced through my mind. Had she gotten into an accident? Was she hurt, or alone, or in trouble? Fear twisted into my stomach like a knife, and I felt powerless, pacing the living room under the dim lamp. Milo sensed my distress and started meowing, rubbing against my legs as if to offer some kind of feline reassurance. It didn't help much, but I appreciated the gesture. The house felt too silent. Every tick of the clock hammered louder, turning seconds into small eternities. Finally, around 7 in the morning, the front door creaked open. I shot up from the couch, exhaustion forgotten, relief rushing through my veins. At least she was safe. Megan walked in, the same outfit from the night before still clinging to her like a memory she couldn't discard. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, but it was her expression that struck me, a mixture of weariness and defiance. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice trembling with concern and the smallest thread of anger. She shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Crashed at a friend's place," she mumbled. There was something in the way she said it, the casual dismissal of my worry, that made my stomach turn. I asked, "Which friend?" Not because I wanted to interrogate her, but because I needed some reassurance that it was all just a misunderstanding. She bristled at that question, as though I had no right to ask for an explanation. She refused to name anyone. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Instead, she stood there, arms crossed, gaze flicking to the floor, the wall, anywhere but my face. A cold realization sank into my bones. She was lying. I pressed her again, my heart pounding. "Megan, just tell me." Who was it? Her voice snapped like a whip. Why does it matter? She retorted. It was just one night. One night. She said those two words so dismissively, as if that should calm the storm inside me. But it did the opposite. Felt like a sudden shift in the world I thought I knew. All those tender moments, the breakfasts in bed, the midnight confessions, the hopes of building a life, now overshadowed by a single phrase that threatened to unravel everything. I asked her directly, "Did you cheat on me?" My voice shook, and part of me still prayed for a denial, for her to say I was misunderstanding the situation. But she just rolled her eyes. "It wasn't serious," she muttered. "It was just a mistake." A mistake, like forgetting to pick up milk at the store, or missing an appointment. But this was so much heavier. I felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. My knees almost buckled. I stared at her, waiting for some flicker of regret in her eyes, some tear that might indicate she recognized the gravity of what she had done. Instead, she stood there in a tired haze, as though we were merely discussing a minor inconvenience. In that moment, the walls of our home, once warm and comforting, seemed to close in on me. I could barely breathe. My mind flashed through memories like a slideshow. Our first Christmas together, the tiny gifts under the tree, the road trip we took down the coast, the nights we stayed up late talking about our future. Was any of it real to her? Or had I been the only one cherishing those moments? The days that followed felt like stumbling through a fog. I was in a state of disbelief, numbness, and hurt. Megan, on the other hand, seemed eager to brush it aside. She apologized, though not in the way I'd hoped. "It didn't mean anything," she kept repeating, as if that should bandage the wound. I tried to parse those words. If it truly meant nothing, then how could she risk everything we had built? If she loved me, why would she throw us away over a fleeting temptation? Our home turned into a silent battleground of suppressed anger and unspoken questions. When I looked at her, I saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone willing to lie to my face, then act as if I were the one overreacting. I could hardly focus at work. My mind replayed her dismissive tone again and again. My appetite disappeared, and I spent sleepless nights on the living room couch because I couldn't bring myself to lie next to her in bed. One morning, exhaustion gnawing at my bones, I asked, "Why did you do it?" My voice was small, not much more than a whisper. She shrugged in that same casual way. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I was just unhappy. It just happened. It just happened." Another phrase that rang hollow. The girl who used to fill my days with laughter was now someone who shrugged away my pain, my trust, my heart. Still, part of me craved an explanation, a reason, an admission of guilt that would at least show she understood the gravity of her betrayal. But it never came. Her eyes remained distant and cold. In the weeks that followed, I tried to confide in a close friend, James, someone I've known since college. We met up at a little diner on the outskirts of town. Over eggs and toast, I spilled everything. Megan's late-night disappearance, her startling confession, the uneasy silence that now hung between us. James listened intently, anger flashing across his face. "I'm so sorry, man," he said, shaking his head. "What are you gonna do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? A big part of me wanted to walk away, to pack up my things and leave the keys on the table. I could move in with a friend, or rent a small studio somewhere and start over. But another part of me remembered who Megan used to be, or at least who I thought she was. I remembered the laughter, the love, the gentleness in her smile when she first said she loved me. Could I really just abandon that? My mind wrestled with 1,000 doubts. Could trust ever be rebuilt? Or was I clinging to a ghost of the person I once loved? James offered an ear and some tough love. "Don't let her make you feel guilty for being upset," he said, his voice firm. "She broke your trust. That's on her. No matter what you choose to do, remember that." Even in the midst of heartbreak, my mind kept drifting back to how Megan and I started. How we filled entire journals with letters to each other, small notes hidden in coat pockets or in between pages of a favorite book. We used to watch movies and hold hands on the couch, feeling the warmth of each other's presence. It all felt so genuine. I asked myself, was she pretending the whole time? Or did something change along the way? Late at night, I'd wander through the house recalling the day we first toured it together. We were so excited, peering into each empty room, imagining where we'd put the furniture, how we'd decorate for the holidays. I remembered the paint we chose for the walls, a soothing, pale blue for the living room, a brighter yellow for the kitchen because Megan wanted a space that always felt like sunshine. That space now felt cold and unfamiliar, weighed down by the knowledge that the love I thought was anchored here had been betrayed. Megan tried to return to a normal routine, but the tension between us was impossible to ignore. There were nights she'd come home from work, toss her bag on the couch, and try to make small talk about her day. I'd nod, murmur a few polite responses, and then wander off to another room. It was as though an invisible chasm split our home in two. Sometimes I wondered if she even felt remorse or if she was simply annoyed that her indiscretion had come to light. One evening, she approached me in the kitchen, her voice quieter than usual. "Mark," she said, "can we talk?" I turned, meeting her eyes for the first time in what felt like ages. She looked conflicted, maybe even sad. For a moment, the old Megan I had fallen in love with seemed to reappear, as if she were carefully stepping out of a hidden corner in her own heart. "I'm sorry," she said. "I really am. I was in a bad place. I never wanted to hurt you. And I know it sounds hollow, but I do love you." Her words trembled at the edges. My chest tightened. I yearned for a sign that she was sincere, that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken. But trust is like a fragile ornament. Once shattered, no amount of glue can hide the cracks. I let her speak, and as she did, tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. She tried to explain that she'd felt distant, that our little arguments had built up, that she was lost in a swirl of frustration she couldn't fully articulate. While she never justified what she did, she confessed that, in a moment of weakness, she found herself stepping over a line she never thought she'd cross. As she spoke, my heart ached with conflicting emotions: pity, sorrow, anger, betrayal, a faint flicker of hope, and then more anger. When she finished, the kitchen was silent. I heard the clock ticking, saw the faint flicker of the ceiling light. She whispered, "Say something, please." I took a deep breath. "You hurt me," I said, my voice raspy. "I believed you were the person I could trust more than anyone in the world. And now, I don't even know who you are." She reached out to take my hand, but I instinctively pulled away. I saw the pain flash across her face, and for a moment that gave me a sense of small, guilty satisfaction. It was proof that she understood the gravity of her actions. A few days later, we decided to have a more honest conversation about where to go from here. We sat in the living room, the TV off, our phones put away. A single lamp cast long shadows on the walls. She spoke first, her words halting. "I want to try to fix this. If you'll let me." I studied the carpet for a while before answering. My thoughts churned in circles. How do you fix something when the foundation, trust, has been shattered? Could we do counseling, take a break, or find some magical remedy to erase the betrayal? The more I questioned, the more uncertain I felt. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I said finally. "I loved you with everything I had, and now everything feels different." My eyes stung with unshed tears. I saw her flinch, and in that moment I realized she was genuinely terrified of losing me. She offered counseling, therapy, anything I wanted, as though ticking items off a list. But my doubt remained. Part of me wondered if she was only offering these things out of guilt and desperation. Did she truly wish to mend our relationship, or was she trying to avoid the consequences of her actions? And did it even matter? The wound was already there, festering and raw. In an attempt to make sense of the chaos, I took a few days off work. I headed to a small cabin on the outskirts of town, an old family property rarely used since my parents moved away. There, among the tall pine trees and the stillness of nature, I tried to find clarity. I spent hours sitting on the porch, listening to the wind rustle through the branches, letting the hush of the forest speak to my heart. Memories floated into my mind, one after another. I recalled the first time Megan and I said, "I love you," how her cheeks turned pink as she smiled through tears of happiness. I remembered the surprise birthday party she planned for me, the way she got all my friends to show up even though I was convinced they'd forgotten. I thought about the joy I used to feel just hearing her key turn in the lock at the end of the day. Then, the bitter memory of that single, fateful night returned, her coming home at dawn, the disheveled look, the nonchalant confession. I felt the wound in my chest rip open all over again. Betrayal is a thief. It steals not only the present but also the trust and all the memories you once held dear. I walked through the woods behind the cabin, letting my footsteps fall softly on the bed of pine needles. The quiet gave me space to confront my pain head-on. A cardinal perched on a branch overhead, singing a brief, wistful tune. It felt like a reminder that life goes on, that heartbreak is not the end, even when it feels like the ground has been pulled out from under you. Processing betrayal, I realized, isn't a single moment or an easy fix. It's a slow, grueling journey through conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, longing, and occasionally a gentle wave of nostalgia that breaks your heart all over again. I wondered if I would ever truly heal, or if I would carry the scar forever. Maybe both. As I sat on the cabin porch on my final morning there, watching the sunlight filter through the pines, I made a decision. I needed a real conversation with Megan. No holding back, no fear of hurting each other's feelings. If we were to salvage anything, we had to lay it all out raw and honest. When I returned home, Megan was waiting by the living room window. She looked anxious, her gaze darting up the moment I stepped through the door. There was a heavy pause before she approached me. "Hi," she said softly. "Hey," I replied, setting my bag down. The house smelled faintly of lavender, as though she'd been lighting scented candles in an attempt to make the place feel peaceful again. My heart clenched at the realization of how different things felt from just a few weeks ago. Now every corner seemed to whisper with tension. We sat down at the kitchen table. The same place we once laughed over burnt pancakes and spilled coffee was now the stage for the most important conversation of our lives. I breathed in, steadying my voice. "I want you to explain everything from start to finish," I said. "No half-truths, no deflections. I need the truth if there's going to be any hope of moving forward." She hesitated, and then her story poured out in fractured sentences. She'd been feeling distant, ignored, lost. Some friend or acquaintance, she wouldn't say who exactly, had given her attention she felt she was missing from me. One thing led to another, fueled by drinks and the thrill of the forbidden. Tears pooled in her eyes as she spoke, and I could see she was ashamed. For a moment it tugged at my heartstrings, reminding me of the warm woman I once knew. But as she told me about her secret texts, about how she let her anger towards me build up instead of talking it out, my mind reeled. Our arguments had been small, typical of any couple, disagreements over chores, finances, future plans. Never had I imagined they would culminate in betrayal. Why hadn't she spoken to me? Why hadn't we sought help together before it reached this breaking point? When she finished, she sat there, trembling. I realized this was the most honest she'd been since that night. Her voice quivered with regret. "I wish I could take it back," she said. "I hate myself for hurting you. I hate that I ruined everything we built." That night, we both cried. She cried for what she did, and I cried for the beautiful love I lost. We stayed at the table for hours, speaking about the corners of our hearts we'd previously kept hidden. She tried to show me that the person she was during her betrayal wasn't the person she wanted to be. I tried to express how the foundation of my trust felt irreparably cracked. Words circled between us, some gentle, some harsh, until exhaustion set in. Finally, sometime after midnight, we drifted to bed, me on the edge, her a careful distance away. The darkness felt heavy, pressing down on us. We lay there, wide-eyed, each lost in separate worlds of remorse and hurt. In the days that followed, we started something resembling therapy. We found a counselor recommended by one of Megan's acquaintances. Initially, I balked at the idea. How can talking to a stranger fix a betrayal this deep? I asked. But I had nothing left to lose by trying, and maybe a thread of hope still remained in my chest, however fragile. The counselor, a calm-faced woman named Diane, listened to our story with a compassionate but firm gaze. She guided us through questions that felt both healing and agonizing. "How did you each contribute to the breakdown of trust?" she asked gently. Megan admitted her fault, her secrecy, her choice to cheat rather than communicate. I struggled, feeling a surge of anger. The truth is, no matter what issues we had, I didn't believe they justified her decision. But Diane reminded me that the session was about exploring, not accusing. Over time, Megan dug into her fears. Fear of abandonment. Fear that I wasn't as committed as she was. For my part, I admitted I sometimes withdrew when I was stressed, failing to notice when Megan needed me to be present. None of it excused her actions, but it helped me see that a relationship is a shared responsibility, even if one person bears most of the blame for a specific betrayal. Months have passed, and every day is still a struggle. There are mornings where I wake up and feel a spark of hope, thinking maybe we can rebuild something new from the ashes. Then, there are days when the memory of her betrayal hits me like a punch to the gut. I'll see her checking her phone, and a wave of suspicion roars through my mind. In therapy, Diane says rebuilding trust is like planting a new tree. It takes time, nurturing, and patience. It won't grow overnight, and it may never bloom the same way again. Sometimes, when Megan and I sit together in the living room, she'll reach for my hand, and I'll let her. Our fingers intertwine, and for a brief moment, the love we once shared seems to shimmer in the space between us. But the scars remain. At night, when I close my eyes, I still remember that terrible dawn when she came home and told me, so casually, that she had been unfaithful. For anyone who's been cheated on, I still don't have all the answers on how to heal. Maybe there is no universal guidebook for this. All I know is that it hurts deeper than words can express, and that healing is a slow, uncertain path. Some people choose to walk away to seek a fresh start and never look back. Others, like me, try to see if anything can be salvaged, if new growth can happen after a forest fire. I question myself daily. Am I staying because I'm afraid of being alone? Or do I genuinely believe Megan and I can build a better relationship on the rubble of the past? I don't know yet, but I'm here, taking it one day at a time, letting the pain run its course, searching for moments of clarity. The small house we share still stands, though it feels different. The walls hold echoes of laughter and heartbreak. Sometimes, late at night, I'll wander into the kitchen and remember the morning sun flooding the room when we first moved in. We were so full of hope back then. Will we ever capture that innocence again? Maybe not. But life doesn't always follow the script we want. All we can do is keep turning the pages, shaping the story as best we can. For now, Megan and I continue our fragile dance between remorse, forgiveness, and the possibility of a new start. Some days, I see genuine regret in her eyes, and I feel a flicker of warmth. Other days, I'm overwhelmed by the lingering bitterness of betrayal, uncertain if any apology could ever mend the heartbreak. But in each sunrise, there's a chance to choose, to try again, or to finally let go. I haven't decided which path to take. Maybe our relationship will find a way to bloom again, more honest and resilient than before. Or maybe we'll accept that some breaks can't be fully repaired. Whichever way it goes, I'm learning that heartbreak, as painful as it is, can be a teacher, showing us our vulnerabilities, our strength, and the depth of our capacity to love and to hurt. That's where I stand now, on the edge of uncertainty, armed with a wounded heart, seeking a road forward. If you've been in my shoes, you know the feeling of numb disbelief, the sting of doubt that colors every memory. But you also know that with time and perhaps with hope you can begin to heal. Whether that healing includes the person who hurt you or not, that's a path each of us must walk on our own. And maybe that's okay, because life, in all its beauty and sorrow, doesn't end with a single heartbreak. It bends and curves, offering us new roads, new choices. So I keep going, one step at a time, uncertain but still breathing, still searching for the kind of peace that can only come from confronting the truth, even if it hurts. For now, I'm here, sharing my story with anyone who will listen, letting my pain become words in the hope that someone else out there might feel a little less alone. Because while betrayal changes you, it doesn't have to define your future. There is life after heartbreak, and one day, maybe not tomorrow but someday, the sunrise might feel warm and welcoming again. Until then, I'm trying to find my way, one sunrise at a time.